Hello, Dazzly Pants here, and for my second video I'm doing a review of Ghostbusters 2016, because I want to draw a distinction between this and the original, funnily enough. Ever since the 3rd of March, when the first trailer dropped on YouTube, I've been watching the events about Ghostbusters unfold with quite a degree of interest, because what was I, 11 when the first film came out? First film was pretty amazing. Alright, you look back at some of the special effects now, and they're on a little bit on the ropey side. But at the time, it was quite an expensive movie, and they didn't skimp on the visuals. For its day, it was good. But more importantly, it was funny. And it stood the test of time. It's a kind of film where my son, who's 9 years old, he watched it for the first time not that long ago, and he liked the movie, and he found it funny. So I decided that I'd eventually get round to watching it, in spite of the fact that the trailer suggested that I really shouldn't. Yes, so 3rd of March is when the trailer dropped, and pretty much, well, not to be too unfair to the film, the trailer actually started off all right. The piano rendition of Ray Parker Jr.'s original music, that's all right. There was nothing particularly disrespectful about that. And then the title words came up: 30 years ago, 4 scientists saved New York. And that, from there on, was pretty much where it's all started going wrong. For the simple fact that we've been told that this is a reboot. It is not a sequel. It is not Ghostbusters 3. That the original cast members will only make cameo appearances. But yet the title words at the beginning of the trailer suggested that this was actually a sequel, because it directly referenced the events of the original Ghostbusters in 1984. So you're thinking, perhaps Sony have done the old switcheroo, and we're actually going to get the movie that we want. And then the trailer starts proper, and then we realise, no, we're not getting the movie we want. Because, let's be honest, no one really wanted, no real fan of Ghostbusters really wanted this film. What they wanted was a last hurrah from the original cast in a Ghostbusters 3, with possibly a passing of the torch over to a new cast, because obviously, unfortunately, Harold Ramis has died. The rest of the cast aren't getting any younger. That doesn't mean they're going to pop their clogs anytime soon, but they're not getting any younger. And it's a simple case that Ghostbusters 3 was the film that we wanted. Now was the time to do it before any more of the cast shuffle off planet Earth. But no, we got this instead. And, well, it's got the worst reaction to a movie trailer ever, and nearly 1 million dislikes on the trailer, and all the subsequent updates to the trailer, whether it be the international or the American one, which is fixed to no longer say 4 scientists, it says 4 friends, because they buggered up the fact that only 3 of the original characters in the film were scientists. Winston Zedmore was just an everyman type. He wasn't a scientist. He just wanted a job, and he just happened to get a job with the Ghostbusters. But that's a minor quibble. The most important thing is that it's based on Ghostbusters, and it needs to be funny, it needs to be engaging, it needs to be characters that we care about, because that's what everyone remembers about the original film. So, as most of the reactions were that it just wasn't funny. There was very few jokes in there. The 1 or 2 that were in there, they just fell flat. And then they showcased some of the visual effects that were going to be in the movie. And I'll say this: the VFX don't look horrible, but the big problem that they have is that they are directly comparable to the Scooby-Doo movie, the one with Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr. The style of the VFX in Ghostbusters 2016 is directly comparable to Scooby-Doo, which isn't cool when we're talking about Ghostbusters, which is $144 million to make. You don't want it to be compared to some cheap rubbish released 10 years ago. So anyway, instead of actually listening to the complaints about the trailer, that the VFX looked a little bit on the ropey side, and that it just wasn't funny, instead of taking on board the criticism, the likes of Sony's marketing, Tom Rothman, Paul Feig, and then later on Leslie Jones and a little bit of Melissa McCarthy, they decided to go the sexist misogynist route. And basically, if you don't like Ghostbusters, the Ghostbusters 2016 trailer, it is solely and utterly because you have a hatred of women and you don't want to see women in what was previously a man's role. Now, obviously, that is true for some of the fan base of Ghostbusters, and possibly true for the most very vocal ones. But the majority of fans, first and foremost, don't have a problem with it being females, so long as it is respectful of the original, it's funny. It's probably not going to deliver the same nostalgia that the original did. Very few movies can do that, because let's not be silly about it. Most of us, when we saw these movies for the first time, we saw them when we were kids. And to expect that same kind of feeling when you're a grown man, that's not going to happen. But majority of the complaints were they just didn't look funny, and that they didn't like the character of Patty Tolan, the black female, Leslie Jones. The trailer really did not put her in a very good light at all. It's almost as if whoever made the trailer picked the very worst scenes that she was in and put it in the trailer. And it's hard to imagine that they did it just off their own back, that they were actually encouraged to do this as a bit of a fuck you, men. This is the movie. If you don't like it, go fuck yourself. And it just didn't look good. And then the more trailers got released, repeating the same scenes and adding a few extras, but still not making people happy. So anyway, the movie gets released. Rotten Tomatoes reviews come in. And there's a very suspiciously quick critics' consensus as well. Normally it takes a little bit of a while before, Rotten Tomatoes aggregates all the scores together and comes up with a glowing description of what they think all the critics think. And currently it's at 73%. But when you click on Top Critics, their view is around about 53%, which is quite a way below the fresh threshold. So anyway, movie got released, and it only did 46 million opening weekend in the US, and it couldn't beat Secret Life of Pets in its second week. And now some people would say, well, Secret Life of Pets is animated and it's for families and kids and all the rest of it. Yeah, but we're talking about Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters, which was a monster hit back in 1984. It was just shy of 300 million back in 1984. With inflation, it's nearly 700 million is what it would be worth today if the movie had been released, with the inflation to the dollar and what have you. So Ghostbusters is not some pissy little film. It's a big-ish franchise. All right, Ghostbusters 2 didn't do brilliantly, but it did enough where it still made money. And now we're in week 2, and now Ghostbusters has been pushed into 5th place. And that's only a week after release. So what was my actual problem with this film? Because I did have problems. Well, there's two things the trailers did, and one of them was wrong. Firstly, the trailers made the movie look rubbish, and secondly, made Leslie Jones's character look like a ridiculous stereotype. Leslie Jones got shortchanged in those trailers. I don't necessarily dislike changing the original male characters for female ones, but it has to be because of a raft of improvements over the original. Just changing the sex of the main characters is not edgy or cool, and it sure as hell is not empowering either. The original Ghostbusters was a supernatural comedy, and that's all the remake reboot needed to be. It didn't need to be about women and girl power. And if the focus is on making a good and funny remake, the fact that it was all women wouldn't have even been a factor. And that's the problem. Ghostbusters 2016 is simply not funny. I didn't laugh once. 2 smiles throughout the movie do not construe a comedy. I simply don't think this kind of franchise movie lies in Paul Feig's skill set. He seems to excel at the raunchy, smaller indie movies, and for the most part, I've liked everything he's done before. I have no downer on the guy. The same can be said for Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig, both been in funny movies. Wiig has even written funny stuff, and frankly, she was the most hilarious thing in the movie Paul. McKinnon and Jones I have no experience of, but in this movie I found McKinnon irritating, and Jones was actually okay. She sure as hell wasn't the stereotype the trailers made her out to be. Okay, let's temper that with "The Power of Patty" and "I don't know if it was a race thing" lines still featured, in spite of those scenes in the trailers really irritating people. But for the most part, she was okay. The VFX were good, obviously better than the original, but then every time you see the VFX you're reminded of Scooby-Doo, and that doesn't compliment your $144 million movie. The villain of the movie, I'm not sure if they couldn't find a more pathetic antagonist if they tried, but his motivations were, "I was bullied, so I'm going to bring hell on earth." Scriptwriters must have had sleepless nights coming up with that. It's hard to not compare it to the original, but in no measurable way does the new iteration come off better than the original except the VFX. But stylistically, the original still has it beat even then. The original movie, whilst a comedy, also played it serious. The new one felt like the characters were in on the joke. I'm saddened that this movie got greenlight so quickly after Harold Ramis's death, because it's as if people behind the scenes gave up on the notion of a Ghostbusters 3 and opted for this instead, and very quickly this one was turned around and made. And it shows. And this is my biggest complaint. This isn't the movie I wanted after 25 plus years of waiting. Ghostbusters 3 was what I wanted. One last hurrah of the original cast. Even if it had been a passing of the torch idea, it would have worked, because any future scriptwriters would have had to follow the same formula that was set down in previous movies. This movie would have been different, and would have been the better for it, and everyone would have won. No one wins in this movie. The original actors certainly don't win. McCarthy and Wiig don't win, and we know they can deliver the goods with a good script. Certainly Paul Feig doesn't win, as it's clear a big-budget franchise movie is not where he's at his most comfortable. Worst of all, fans of Ghostbusters don't win, because when this movie fails, as it undoubtedly will, any further Ghostbusters movies will take just as long as this one did to come about. But the major problem that I have with the movie is the whole marketing about the movie. I'll use the analogy of I don't know, Mercedes-Benz. New buyers of Mercedes-Benz, come buy our cars. If you don't want to buy our cars, it's because you're all a bunch of bastards. And that's pretty much the way the marketing has gone for this movie. Insult the very people that are more likely to put their hands in their pockets and go to the theatre and see it. But no, the marketing did everything it possibly could to alienate the very people that would support your movie. And lots of people didn't buy into the sexist and misogynist shtick that they were pushing, but then they were thinking, I don't want to be associated with your film at all. I'm not going to be accused of being a sexist or a misogynist. And frankly, go fuck yourself, because why should you get my money? And originally the media were praising Sony on the way that they were tackling the trolls, as they were calling them. But that's only a small minority, and it completely dismisses the relevant and genuine complaints that people had. And I'm flummoxed that people thought that was a defence. But yeah, well, enough about this film. It's 3 out of 10 for me, and it's frankly crap. Bye.